Picture this. You're cozied up on your couch, surrounded by the warm glow of your screen, lost in your favorite comfort movie. For me, it's a Bollywood classic with a steaming cup of chai. For you, it might be something entirely different. But regardless of our preferences, there's a universal truth here. We find warmth, the kind we don't find anywhere else, on our screens. It's the stories we choose to consume that shape the future of our well-being. Cinema wields the power to mold us. And by the end of this talk, you'll agree with me when I say it influences our thinking big time. I mean, we all know we wanted to be lawyers at one point after watching Harvey Specter or Saul Goodman. So today, I'm going to introduce you to the 4 R's of cinema and how this art form that we created has in turn been shaping our emotional intelligence. Starting with number 1, refuge. Finding emotional refuge in comfort content. According to a theory by Bloomler and Katz in 1974, we've all got 4 key needs that we satisfy by consuming media. First, we have something called affective needs, the need to distract and de-stress, fulfilled by our classic comfort shows, like The Office, New Girl, Friends, and so on. Then, to get our mind running and processing, we have the cognitive need to learn new things about the world or stay informed about current events, like watching the news or a true crime documentary. Now, let's rewind a little bit. Remember back in middle school when all your friends were talking about a big franchise like the MCU or Star Wars, and you felt left out? That day, when you went back home and watched all the Iron Man movies, you fulfilled something called a social need, the need to have something to talk about with your friends and family. And lastly, when a film or show makes us peek within and question our sense of self and our beliefs, it satisfies our personal identity needs. For example, the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, or my personal favorite, Fleabag. Now, let's move on to number 2, emotional release and catharsis. Cinema also plays the role of a counseling couch by inducing a cathartic experience. The catharsis hypothesis, introduced by Aristotle and now endorsed by various psychologists, basically tells us that experiencing strong emotions in a safe and controlled environment can help reduce their negative impact and improve mental health. For example, the movie Up, where Carl, an elderly man, loses his beloved wife, Ellie. Many viewers find that they can cry and grieve along with Carl because it helps them process their own emotions. In fact, this new era of animated films like Coco and Inside Out by big companies like Disney and Pixar is centered around viewer catharsis. By allowing us to experience our emotions in a safe and controlled environment and in a cartoonish atmosphere, they make our feelings less intimidating to feel. Now, quick show of hands. How many of you have ever walked out of a theater feeling like you want to adopt a pet or be kinder to your mom? I know we've all felt that last one. So, how did a bunch of frames on screen do that to us? The answer brings us to our 3rd R, resonance and character identification. Cinema gets this power from Green and Brock's narrative transportation, the psychological process of how a film captures our attention and absorbs us into its world. We are transported so deep into a narrative, so invested in a story, that we start thinking from the point of view shown to us. And transported people are more likely to engage in behaviors related to the story. In fact, after the release of the Bollywood movie Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara in 2011, there was a 65% increase in tourism to Spain. Why? Because it featured 3 friends who took a surprisingly life-changing trip to Spain. Quite a thinker, huh? How just 2.5 hours in a theater can make us swipe our cards after walking out. Narrative transportation is why a show with impossibly attractive characters living their ridiculously perfect lives wouldn't make us click next episode at 3 a.m. because we don't see ourselves in them. Speaking of which, something we're all guilty of is looking for ourselves on screen. And more often than not, we find ourselves. How many of you here have thought, that's so me, while watching Michael Scott or Monica Geller? That doesn't just happen. There's a process behind it. How does it work? We compare, we covet, and we question our own messy, unscripted realities. But then, throughout binging, we subconsciously stumble upon a story that cracks us open. A character with flaws we recognize, struggles we resonate with, or even a laugh that breaks the spell of self-doubt. And then, you're not watching it to escape anymore. You're watching it to connect with that character similar to you. And it's about realizing that even in the most unreal worlds, the most relatable stories are the ones that make us realize we're not alone. And before you know it, it's a match. You have affiliated with the character. You found something to connect with. Grizzard and Eden, in 2022, came up with a model that tells us as we consume more and more content, our moral compass starts being shaped by the choices and values of the characters we affiliate with. So, 2 lessons to learn here. 1, beware of the die-hard Barney Stinson fans around you, because next thing you know, you're going along cracking derogatory jokes about minorities, or worse, laughing at them. Because turns out, watching a show with regressive characters constantly can do almost the same damage as hanging out with a regressive friend. Your parents were right about the rotten apple theory. Speaking of rotten apples, we've come to our 4th and final R, redefinition and how cinema is redefining toxic masculinity. Just punches and kicks. That's all men used to be in movies. Unfortunately, movies are still used to reinforce the stereotype that men should not show vulnerability. What does that have to do with us? Gerbner in the 70s came up with the cultivation theory, which tells us that prolonged exposure to media can shape our perception of reality. In cinema, the portrayal of toxic masculinity, like emotional repression, hyper-aggression, and constant competition with other men, has cultivated a societal belief that this is normal and even desirable in men. Think of the angry young man phenomenon of the 90s, or Fight Club, which features a young man who joins a secret underground fight club to cope with his personal problems. Such depictions can make the youth and influence the youth who are looking for role models and the ideal man on screen. Cinema subconsciously directs our understanding of what is right, wrong, good, and bad. So thankfully, it is evolving. With shows like This Is Us, Ted Lasso, and even Schitt's Creek, they celebrate men and their sensitivity. They encourage emotional awareness. And this redefinition transfers from the screen into our lives. It creates a safe space of learning for other members of society to see, understand, and accept the men around us without societal and stereotypical beliefs. And it helps us create and build healthier relationships with them. Even though learning happens in schools and colleges, our well-being has only recently become a point of focus in these institutions. Cinema is a business. There is film that makes us question our biases and challenge our beliefs, stereotypical beliefs, and there is cinema that uses us for our hate, earning off of our biases, showing us the us versus them perspective. The choice is always in your hand. Whether you choose pictures that make you a part of the change, sparking eye-opening conversations, and challenging your biases, you become less of a part of the problem. You become closer to being media literate, knowing how to separate the good apples from the rotten ones. And trust me, cinema's been having this huge subconscious power over us for so long, and it's high time we notice it and use it for good. So now that you and I know how, let's use this gift to rewrite our own stories, one well-chosen film at a time. Thank you.